ErrDaisha.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. I was just sharing with folks who our guest is today, which now we all get to see. It is the wonderful, amazing boss human, ErrDaisha Floyd. Yeah, let's go ahead and get it started. Could you start us off with just telling everybody a little bit about yourself for the folks who don't know, so that once after this is all over, now they know.
Yes, sure. Hello. I'm so excited to be talking to Tomasa and Community Tampa Bay, and that Community Tampa Bay is holding the space. I think it's really great. So thank you so much for doing that. But for me, I am a Tampa native, born and raised in Tampa. I currently go to Columbia. I don't know. I guess I still go there. I've been in Tampa for like most of the years, so it's kind of weird to say I'm still a student there. But yeah, I'm going into my junior year. I'm studying sociology and education. I actually just changed to the second part to education. I came in thinking about going to law school afterwards on like a pre-law track. Um, and that really started, I guess I've always wanted to be a lawyer, but my interest in criminal justice reform and I guess prisons and police in general really, uh, I guess, became a big part of my life in like 2016, like when I was in high school. I took a sociology class for the first time at Hillsborough Community College and read The New Jim Crow and was like blown away. It was like, what? This is insane. It was like kind of like the first time I had language for things. I was learning about new things I had no idea about. And I was just, yeah, really blown away by like that sort of research. And so I knew that I wanted to do sociology and that I wanted to be integral in dismantling or at least reforming the criminal justice system at that point. So that's why, yeah, I kind of went into Columbia thinking law and sociology. Um, I since 2016, since I've like first read the New Jim Crow, I guess I've been learning, reading, listening, talking about criminal justice reform and about like the criminal justice system as much as possible to anyone. Um, I Upon reading the New Jim Crow, I learned about the fact that at the time felons weren't able to vote in the state of Florida because of the law at the time, and was like really shocked by it. I mean, I have four uncles who had been to prison, so it was just that also kind of activated me, and I knew that I wanted to tell as many people as possible about like the New Jim Crow and about like the research that had been done because it was just so it just blew me away, to be honest. And so that's like I said, that was like kind of my starting point of reading and digging and getting me to this place I am now. Um, do you want me to? I can keep going, or do you want
Sure.
to?
Yeah. You know what?
Okay.
Because the thing is, I have questions prepared just in case, but like literally, like this is a conversation and like just an opportunity to go in depth into talking about your work with abolition. So absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So, like I said, it started because I stumbled upon the New Jim Crow. It was like, whoa, read a bunch more, learned a bunch more. And 2017 is when I decided to start my YouTube channel during the summer. And like I said, that was really because I needed to tell people about the Jim Crow. One of my, I think like the third video is literally like conspiracy theories, war on drugs, and it's like it's not actually a conspiracy. They actually like they actually did it to Black communities. Um, and yeah, it was just really just a way for not only for me to tell people about um, like the injustices of the world, but really for me to learn more myself. I'm realizing as time is going on that I really learn the best when I'm teaching and talking to other people. Like that's when I'm able to things just become so much more clear when I'm able to teach or talk. So that's also where the me wanting to teach after graduating college came in. Um, and also 2017 is when I went to Anytown. So that was definitely
A lot happening.
exactly. It was um, it it was a different things that I had been like feeling and like questioning for a long time. Anytime just gave me so many words basically for it, and really organized just um, the the things that I was starting to understand and starting to know, in terms of just like the social identities, how they're broken down. Like I never before then I had never like sat down and thought about how the different ways humans show up in the world, and then how like oppressive systems then like lay on top of that. So it was, yeah, a really really transformative week, and it just energized me even more to continue telling other people about it, because I'm like, I've just I just learned and I stumbled upon so much more information. I have to get this out. And then 2017 is also when I started applying for college. Columbia was always like my top choice, I guess. I wanted to be in New York City, wanted to do research, and also thinking about law school. Um, but the college application process was also really transformative for me, I guess. I guess it was like another first time of me sitting down and kind of looking at my life uh, in a way where I'm trying to present myself, I guess. It's a the politics of college applications is like another story, but just in terms of me actually being able to reflect, like that's another piece that I guess is really important to my journey. Literally just being able to write and look back on the things that have sort of happened in my life, and how that those things have shaped me. So yeah, that was like I was like, oh, I should do this more. I should like learn about myself in this way more. And Anytown, like I said, was definitely, I'm so lucky, and so happy that I went to Anytown kind of like right before I was applying for college, because I was like, well, I can say some more things now in terms of like not only the injustices of the world, but like I said, just being able to present and talk about myself. So
Mm.
really, really great part of Anytown.
I feel like a few things that you were saying as you're talking about this is like kind of like even for myself, I'm reflecting on like the process of learning and growing, and I feel like that's one of the things that is popping out for me of what you're saying is like the process of also teaching other people and helping people on their journey to understanding certain things, but then also in that process of um, engaging in that conversation, um, developing that insight for ourselves as well. So I think like that's something that resonates with me a lot. Um, I want to come back to social identities because I think you've been posting a lot of things, and like intersectionality is a huge, huge piece of
Mm-hmm.
this work. And kind of when we're talking about abolition, there is a lot of things that you've been posting that is calling attention to, again, different aspects of, you know, different social identities. So yes, we're talking about anti-Black racism, and at the same time looking at how does this intersect with a whole bunch of other social identities. So I now that you mentioned that, I want to come back to that in a little bit. But could you kind of give us a primer on kind of your initial work with like prison abolition? Like you said, like you started getting interested and sort of involved in like reading about the new Jim Crow and everything in like 2016, 2017, around that time.
Mm-hmm.
Could you give us a primer on sort of like your earlier sort of understanding and coming to that, and then also maybe how that's evolved over time in terms of like what does the broader abolition movement look like? I know that's a big question. That's a lot, and at the
Yeah.
same time, I know we could do this for like 15 hours at least.
Yeah, no, it's so like it's also like I love to reflect, so I love that question. It's something that is coming up a lot in this moment too, as I like um I guess my role in this movement, but also like my journey becomes more clear. So um yeah, it's helpful like laying all these things out and talking about it. So thank you once again for having this space. But yeah, so actually right after 27, I can't recall when's like the first time I heard about prison abolition, which I really, now looking back on, I'm like, darn, I should have like rubber stamped this article and said, "Here, this is what you start with." Um, but I somewhere around like 2018, I was just listening to like more podcast from people who was like working in criminal justice reform, but also lots of like Black people working in criminal justice reform. So it always had, um, it was always tied to like the inherent anti-Blackness in the society. So yeah, and I guess I'll get into this more too. But I feel like growing up, I was always sort of conscious. 2016 is really when I like woke up for real, but always sort of understood that like things were weird or like just like
Mm.
out of place, like not, and just in that, also thinking back on it, I've reflected on this like a lot actually. I remember always like confronting the fact that this is the way things are. Like not even like an adult happened to tell me, or like just these messages that I'm receiving from media or just wherever, and feeling like, okay, maybe these are the way things are, but like, do they really have to be? Like, just always, I I really I'm like, go smaller ErrDaisha for like always having that like small inkling of like, is this really the way it has to be? And so yeah, so like because that was always there, I was just bound to end up in a prison abolitionist space, um, because um, yeah, like abolition, the women who have like built the movement in the United States, they really get to the root. It's really, um, really radical in that sense that it gets to the root of the issue in society, and that um, I guess has attracted me. That really attracted me, like really pulled me into it. But that's something that has always sort of been there, and it maybe been why I decided to study sociology in high school, and stumbled upon a new Jim Crow. So I guess I'm trying to say that I've always been a prison abolitionist in a way. Um, but yeah, definitely, 2018, I started working for the Dream Defenders. And they weren't explicitly using like prison abolition or like the words that come along with prison abolition, but they have something called their freedom papers. And one of the papers in there is freedom from police and prisons.
Mm.
And yeah, it's like a set of seven or eight, and it's like freedom to be, freedom from war. And so that was also uh, another summer that was really critical in giving me more language to understand and really understand things I've been questioning my entire life, sort of thing. And so it just felt, I love Dream Defenders. I love Community Tampa Bay for that reason, because it really felt like I was um, not only understanding the world, but I was like understanding like myself, because I'm like, oh, that's why I've felt like this, or oh, that's why I've always like questioned these things. Yeah. So also when I got to college, also college made me an abolitionist, definitely. If I wasn't if I was an abolitionist before going to Columbia, I definitely came out after my first year like I'm an abolitionist, for lots of reasons. One, I saw Angela Davis in person for the first time.
Oh, wow.
I don't, yeah. She was like giving a talk in New York City. So I was definitely, I try to go to as many like conferences, and there's a
Mm.
bunch of hubs and abolitionist things happening in New York City. So that's also why I was able to like plug into so many things, not just Angela Davis, but also I saw Miriam Kaba for the first time in person. She's like legendary in the prison abolitionist community. You should follow her on Twitter at Prison Culture. But she's been working for a long time, and it was just like she was giving a talk about the prison system, and that honestly that might have been the first time where someone like laid out the case for prison abolition for me. But I kind of remember going like I went to that meeting kind of already knowing who Miriam Cabo was. So again, it was like so many things just happening at the same time, and I was kind of like when I was placed in New York City, I was seeing flyers about abolition everywhere. So I'm like, oh, perfect. I'll go to this thing. Um, yeah, and then in terms of I guess I don't know if it's a question later, but why I was so adamant about saying like college maybe an abolitionist was because my first year of college was not. not great, like at all. It's very, very, very tumultuous. And it was even more that because I went in clinging to this idea of perfection, saying like knowing I went to all the meetings where everyone told you, oh yeah, your first year is not that good, and I'm like every time I was like I know exactly what to do, so I'm gonna be I'm gonna be fine, I'm gonna be straight. And yeah, I I guess I would say I'm kind of like a recovering perfectionist now, um, but definitely went into college not fully understanding the gravity of that, and also not fully understanding the gravity of having anxiety. So I guess I've always known that I have anxiety, but I was diagnosed with it when I got to Columbia, um, and so it's a bunch with like the mental health like industrial system as well because um, I basically came to abolition, came to like accountability, came to I can't survive in this way um,
Mm.
because I really didn't have like the resources or the support or what I needed going into Columbia. That being like on part of the institution of Columbia, but also the way I've been socialized and conditioned, and not having ever fully like kind of starting to like look at myself and uncover myself when in the college application process. But I guess really not being able to do that until I got to college and I was on my own and I was experiencing this world for the first time, like just by myself without like anyone. Um, and also like studying sociology. So I was like reading about these things, like refining my understanding of capitalism. Like I read Marx for the first time my first semester. So it was, like I said, really tumultuous to do all those things. And it was kind of like, I can't, knowing what I know now, knowing that like I have this anxiety that makes me feel like I have to be perfect, but knowing that this capitalist world, this white supremacist capitalist world, isn't exactly set up for a dark skinned black woman to be perfect. So like something I either was gonna have to like kill off major parts of myself or um, turn to something way radical, basically, and that's where abolition was like here like this is an entire movement, a 20-year movement, black women like survivors of sexual violence, like um and so yeah it was kind of abolition was kind of a logical end for me, but uh I don't know if that college sped up that process, I guess, and experiencing like what all everything I went through my first year uh kind of arrived me at a place where I was able to really feel in my heart that the way we exist, the way we relate to one another, the way we live is not the way I want to live. It's not the way that
Mm.
I see I'm able to take care of the people who I care about, who I say I care about. So that's just also the thing. I got to Columbia saying, I'm gonna be a big shot lawyer in New York City for a few years. You know, I'm gonna have the perfect life. That was the thing. Like I'm very honest with myself about the fact that I chose Columbia because it was Columbia. Like it's like a like, you know, whatever Columbia is in everyone else's mind. That was part of the reason I chose to go there. And I was feeding into this idea of perfectionism. Um, and so I kind of got there and was like, oh my God, I can't. My community though, like everyone who I love and care about too, is like I and disconnected with in a really just a way I wasn't expecting at all. And I guess I also realized that I'm rooted in community in that way. Like I need to have people be able to identify my people, be able to yeah, and so that's why I also want to be if I'm not saving the world, I'm not imagining that, but a place where I can build community and take care of the people I care about. Oh no, is that mine? You're loading. I don't know if that's me. You're moving now.
Sorry, I think the connection is coming in and out.
Oh, I'm not sure if you could.
Okay, of what
Okay.
you're saying, I feel like there's a connection. Unfortunately, right now is stable. All right. Thanks for the folks in the chat that are saying that we can still hear to try to resolve for that bit. But this is part of exactly what is the capitalist system as well. Is there's also monopolies in terms of internet service providers that is conspiring against us to have this conversation. So um, we need to get you a hotspot stat. I'm going to invest in one. That'll be a next step for me. So I want to ask about, because I think like what you were saying about anxiety in that sense of like perfection, that perfectionism, right? I feel like that fits in with some of our conversation before in regards to how this relates to abolition and this sort of the binary of people in terms of binaries, right? You're either perfect or not. You either meet this standard or you are inadequate and have a deficit and you don't fit in, and we have to punish you, remove you, find some way of taking you out of society, as opposed to treating folks as individuals and as nuanced, complex human beings. What are some of your connections and experiences and observations in regards to how your personal journey around that sort of perfectionism and sort of like your own sort of internal work relates to that larger struggle for abolition?
Yeah, that's a great question. Uh, yeah. So also, I guess realizing that I have, or the medical industrial complex telling me that I have anxiety, and so I was kind of like seeing a therapist at Columbia, and then eventually I stopped because yeah, it wasn't really working for me, and I have a lot of gripe with the medical industrial complex, but again, a different conversation. And that then like I was left with a space, and uh, to I guess like help myself like figure out how I was gonna cope and manage with this anxiety, and kind of turn to mindfulness practices. I turned to journaling, yoga. I do yoga a lot now, and meditation. I would say I've been doing it for those three main things for about a year, maybe a year and a half now because it's summer. And when I first started meditation, like could not thought I was like not perfect at it, was unproductive at it, and couldn't really do it for more than 10 minutes. But now I can like do it every day, and it's just it's allowed me to I guess to a big thing in abolition as well as accountability. So I'm gonna connect that to I guess being mindful, and being uh, becoming conscious and becoming mindful, because I was able to I realized when I was chasing perfection, I was always um not like in the present moment at all. Like I was always chasing a different moment, always yeah, trying to control really something that I didn't really have control over. And so mindfulness, like all the things I do for mindfulness really allow me to tap into my agency and in my control, like in the present moment. Because it's like it's really easy for me to not only like spiral into anxiety, but like also getting like really tough, hard working moods where like I'm like bulldozing over every living thing, and I'm like, I'm gonna get this paper done. I don't eating what? Don't even think about it. Like I don't. I don't need to use the bathroom. I don't even know what that is. Um, and like with also like uh, the people around me as well. Like I remember when I was organizing with Dream Defenders that summer, I took on a bunch of work. Like didn't was not fully understanding like what the work entailed or like my anxiety at all yet. And I remember just being super mean and rude to like my family and like my boyfriend and like my friends, and just not having the time at all to give to them, like not literally not even a moment to connect with them in a day or whenever I was like in my mood. So yeah, I mindfulness allowed me to realize that about myself, that I if I don't tap into the present moment and stay present and find my agency there, then um it's I have tendencies to bulldoze everyone else's like feelings and personhoods and yeah, yeah. So, and that ties to accountability within abolition. Accountability being like as big as community accountability in terms of how do we prevent cycles of violence from repeating, but all the way down to like the basic meaning of accountability for me, which just means like taking account. So like my this entire journey, and then also my mindfulness journey, has literally just been me taking account for like what's right there in front of me. Like I've been able to gain more language and take account for these systems that impact me on a daily basis. And I've been able to name and take account of the ways that I like reproduce those systems myself. And in that way, then I can further do the next step of accountability, which is um, like taking my agency back and moving in a way that I want to move based on whatever values that I've been able to adopt. And yeah, so for me, that's been really um, trying to find ways to be more caring in my relationships.
Mm.
Like every single relationship, trying to be more present and to actually see if I'm meeting the needs of that person in the relationship. Because I feel like that was, I guess that was also a big thing for me. Never really realizing, and yeah, actually this is connected to perfectionism. Never really realizing the importance and meaning of relationships, and like of feeling and of like just the process of relating, because where perfectionism is always like about the end state of things.
Mm.
So it's not, I was never that was kind of like the block that I had, I would say, before waking up. And it's definitely like a product of the capitalist system. But it's the way that I internalize it. I'm also into astrology, so like reading my birth chart, I was like, I can see how the perfectionism went off the wall. I can see where that happened, and also like reflecting um on my life as well. So yeah, once I was able to see that, like I wasn't even relating to myself in a good way. Like I was literally being
Mm.
so punishing to myself if I didn't do what I say I had to do or
Mm.
whatever. Like if I didn't meet whatever deadline. And that was pretty. I'm not saying it was like easy, and I didn't have a hard time in high school in terms of like life. But I was able to do it in high school. Like I got it done. I was with my family in high school. I got to college and I wasn't really able to do it. And even saying that, like I got like two B's my first semester. So I went back and I was like, I had a terrible semester. And everyone's like, oh, what did you get a B? And I was like, well, yeah, that's what happened. But like I also like almost died. Like I almost like killed myself for the system basically. And
Mm.
so that was when I was like, oh, so it's
Oh.
really like it's not about whatever I can be perfect at or produce for whoever. It's really about how I am like relating in to myself, in terms of like emotions, and also like just like my body. Um,
Mm.
and
I
yeah,
I feel
yeah.
like this really, so like this is, there's so many, there's some, first of all, I saw some hearts and love in the chat, and just
Thank
want
you.
to highlight that because like, everything that you're saying right now is like facts. Like that whole idea of like end state, like the way that we think in terms of like end state, it's like if we are not here, therefore failure. And like absolutely that internalization of that, like I definitely, that resonates much with me. And at the same time, I think like how does that exactly what you said of like that question of like how do I internalize that and then perpetuate that? How do I support and perpetuate these systems because of the fact that I haven't questioned this for myself? Is I see in the chat here from Maria Jose, maybe kind of rewinding a little bit. I feel like we're getting super conceptual and we're like, yeah, expansion. Like we're already having that conversation. And I think she's asking,
I tend to go there.
can you tell us a little bit more about what's like in the context of Black Lives Matter movement?
Okay. Yeah, so I guess the biggest thing right now, the calls for defunding the police, um, calls from a bunch of different groups around, but I guess the ones that I've been focused on, a lot of organizers have been focused on, is Minneapolis, and get an agreement with the city to dismantle or defund. I guess that would definitely fall in lines of abolition work, and it's also really important to know early years that overnight whatsoever. Definitely the protest gave new, but organizers in Minneapolis defund MPD for literally years, and they have like
I'm
they did
sorry,
a whole.
can you hear me?
I can hear you.
ErrDaisha,
Yes. Oh,
sorry. I
oh,
think
I was cutting out.
I'm seeing in the chat cutting out a little bit. I think both of us are.
Okay.
If you could repeat, sorry, if you can go back just a little bit and repeat what you said. I think I heard bits and pieces about like Minneapolis as a model and sort of that work not being an overnight thing. If you can kind of give a little bit more, just back up just a little bit and repeat that. Sorry about that.
Yes, very good. So yeah, that's exactly what I was saying, that work was going on for years, from Reclaim the Block and MPD 150. They have there's like a huge report on the Minneapolis Police Department a few years ago, or maybe last year, that was like integral to getting this agreement that they got this year. So any abolitionist work is long term. Well, lots of abolitionist work is long term, because definitely there are, I guess, organizations or movements that happens around certain reforms that are considered abolitionist reforms, in terms of they work towards our larger goal of dismantling the larger punishment system. But I guess the lane that I read about the most and experience the most, especially coming from like New York City, is like I said, Black and brown women who are working with sexual violence, around sexual violence in terms of the prison. So one group in particular, Survived and Punished, out of New York City. They are an abolitionist hub, like an abolitionist group that builds campaigns with criminalized survivors. So women and genderqueer folks who have been put in prison because they were trying to survive either like domestic violence, or sex workers who are trying to defend themselves. And so they not only like build relationships with these women who are in prison, but they also campaign to get their sentences commuted, because any governor of any state can let anybody out of prison whenever they feel like it. And so that not only is that like practical organizing, giving support to people who are in the inside, and trying to and making their story known, but they do so many events and so much I guess it would be political education around like building the politic and knowledge around abolition. And so that is really when I think of abolitionist orgs, like I think about organizations who are doing the work of I guess building the curriculum and like writing the articles and doing the videos, trying to get more people in, and also trying to solidify and clarify what the movement is.
Mm.
But like I said, these people are also engaged in like they vote as well, and they engage in political and electoral organizing, I should say, electoral organizing. But I I like much more to read about and think about the initiatives that are really community based. And that's like a Survived and Punished, that's like the Bay Area Transformative Justice Coalition out of California. And they do a lot of, I guess, thought and political education around disability justice, and how that connects to the larger prison abolition movement. And like they have so many resources on like their website in terms of learning more about these things, ways to think more about these things. They have a really cool thing called the pod mapping exercise, where like you literally take the time to think about the relationships you're in and who you would call if you were going to harm or if you've been harmed, and who would call you if they've done harm or been harmed, and just like I said, really taking a way to try to be accountable in your relationships. So that's also how I would say this, like prison abolition works looks. It's a lot of it's a lot of talking, a lot of conferences
Yeah.
at this point.
Can I ask to make sure I understand, like when you're talking about like the pod mapping and mapping relationships, it almost sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong on this, it almost sounds like doing that work sort of personally, individually, and with our relationships to set the groundwork for like police abolition. So it's like, if I can have healthy relationships and cultivate my community and networks in a healthy way, that does not require waiting until a boiling point or some kind of tipping point where, okay, now we have to use,
Mm-hmm.
we're basically, it's like and I don't want to use the word forced into, but like in a sense, it's like I don't know what else to do because I don't have the groundwork laid to turn to a punitive system. Is that
Mm-hmm.
kind of accurate?
Yeah, exactly. Like prison abolitionists say all the time that it's abolition is really about presence. Like it's about taking the time to build the things and set up the conditions for prisons to be obsolete. Like I'm like making these graphics right now, and it's like, because everyone says, "Oh, that's not going to happen overnight," and it's like no one knows that more than prison abolitionists. Like we absolutely know for a fact that we're not going to wake up tomorrow and they're going to be like all fall into the ground. Like that's literally why we do the work moment by moment to build to the instance where we can wake up and they're no longer there. And like I said, that's getting in and just doing the relationship work. And it may not sound like glamorous and like you're a part of the movement, but that it to me is really about like trying to care about people and care about living things more. And then I should also say that there's a bunch of groups, and not even groups, but people who are prison abolitionists who engage in transformative justice circles. So this is things that happen after harm has taken place, and either it can be the survivor or the victim of the violence or the perpetrator of that violence decide to, I guess, like not, yeah, definitely not go the legal route or use the prison system, but engage in a transformative justice process, which can take a very, very, very long time, because it's literally figuring out how the harm can be repaired. And that, in terms of what the survivor needs, like these processes are definitely survivor centered, but there's always like or usually in the models that like I've read about, There's a team for the survivor, and there's also an accountability team. So a team that works directly with the perpetrator. And so sometimes like they all sit down and talk, and other times like the process can look a few different ways, but that's definitely basically the idea of it. That it will be not just the survivor and the perpetrator, but people around them who care and support them, and maybe even other people who have been impacted by that violence in different ways. Being able to take the time and figure out what actually needs to be done to repair the harm,
Mm.
and so that we can continue being in relationship with one another. But that doesn't mean that at the end of the day that the survivor and the perpetrator or the person who has done the violence run off in the sunset holding hands, or even that the person who has done violence apologizes, because what I'm learning is that these accountability processes don't necessarily require that that person apologize, but it really um, is about, yeah, like being able to take account of what the survivor needs, and with an eye toward like this harm, this violence never happening again. So that's also um, like the biggest, I guess the biggest thing in prison abolition is like we understand that harm and violence is, it's a part of larger cycles, and so we have to get in the business of like disrupting those cycles, and treating it as cycles, and not just treating it as a, there's some really evil bad people in the world that we can lock away, and then we'll be like, we'll all run free and we'll be happy, because it's not, yeah, disposability is not going to disposability hasn't, or in punishment hasn't ended the injustices of the world. And I think that was like the thing that was most clear for me, is like this idea that like there's bad guys, evil guys in the world. It was like, it was never, I guess it was never enough for me to just put all the bad stuff in the world on individuals. I was just like, I don't know. I don't know about that. I think there is a different way that we can like live and relate to one another, where we can transform harm that occurs and not just let it continue to happen. Yeah.
So I think with this kind of, there's a kind of couple key things there of like the bad guys, right? Like the labeling of bad guys or bad people, um, and then also I think that key point of this is a long-term process. It is not an overnight thing. It is not, we have, it is part of it is, you know, I think that's one of the things with like defund the police. It's not, the call is not just like just cut funding and then everything is fine. Like that's not the argument. Um, like you said, there is groundwork that is being laid and needs to continue to be laid. Um, I guess kind of in thinking about popular discourse, it's like one of the things that's interesting is that like this anti-black racism and state violence, like this has existed all throughout American history. This is not new. We have seen this also in recent times with, you know, camera phones and everything else. Like this is the circumstances aren't necessarily new in a lot of ways, right? Maybe apart from COVID, in this particular year. Um, what do you think? Because like I think like maybe like even looking back like 10 years ago, and yes, to some degree now, like there's a lot of calls for like arrest the people who killed this person, right? There's arrest the cops. You know, it is still operating kind of within this sort of, here are some individuals who are bad cops or who are bad actors, and we need to remove them from that system. What is different now? Like, what do you see as different now in this movement? Like, I think there has been sort of also like, um, was it eight can't wait, and sort of like the reform policies that were being pushed as opposed to abolishment and, you know, rethinking the entire structure, right? What is different now in terms of where we're at in this moment in history, and where should we go, and what should be our push?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty amazing that a call like defund the police is as popular as it is. Like as much controversy around it, it is your if it's
Can you hear me?
cutting out. I'm gonna keep talking. I can. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's definitely it's abolitionists and people who have been kind of working in this for a while. I was watching one webinar and I forget who was talking about this, but they were basically when Black Lives Matter like first started, like that's not a good slogan, that's not a good catchphrase, like that's not gonna galvanize the people or whatever. And like now we see that that's not definitely not true. And so it's too radical basically. And so I think that the fact that there's so much conversation around it is definitely new. And I credit that to again the abolitionists who have been like doing the work every day, like between kind of these like hot moments, to figure out like what would be the best language, basically like continue to talk to as many people to assess the current moment we're in to like move the movement forward, like to continue to do things to push the movement forward. For myself, like I'm definitely talking to way more people about abolition. Like before this moment, I feel like I was like the friend that was like, oh, I gotta tell you about like something else, and I would like talk my friend's ear off for an hour, or like the family member at like the dinner where I would be like, well, do y'all know about prison abolition? Um, but now it's not even like it's a more formal process, but I definitely feel like I'm connecting and just having more conversation about abolition, which I love because like it teaches me more, like it helps me learn more as I'm talking to other people. So I see like the moments definitely as building on one another. I To be honest, like it does make me I am a little wary of the moment. I guess that comes from knowing and understanding that this isn't the moment when everything changes. Like there's gonna be more black people killed by the police, and it's gonna take a lot of many more days, months, years. I'm not exactly sure on the timeline, but it's gonna take some more time to um, get us ready, get us prepared, get us mindful, present enough to uproot the system of white supremacist capital. I call it white supremacist capitalism from its roots. And yeah, and I guess I'll also use that to talk about like what's happening for me in this moment, because I like things are just so much more clear in this moment right now, than they've like ever been in terms of my critique of capitalism and how that connects to racism, and how that organizes our entire world, um, and again and then connecting that to like my everyday mindfulness practices. um, yeah, I'm actually I'm gonna post some graphics, so I'm gonna plug that. And I've also been doing and I go live in an hour on Thursdays talking about abolition. And today I'm gonna be talking more about like justice, how I see um capitalism as really disrupting life, disrupting our ability to care, our ability to relate to one another. And that's really all the way to nature. Like I did this big project last year, tying John Locke and the Second Treatise on Government, like the basically the thing that was like when humans are in their natural state, humans are basically alone in the woods. He was like the guy who formalized like that thought process, and that like gave rise to liberalism and individualism, and basically how that connected to like our ideas of wilderness and our ideas of nature. and through that, I was really able to see that we we like capitalism dominates and exploits nature, and it's because of that, like that initial relationship, our initial relationship with Earth. It kind of like reverberates to all our other relationships, and it disrupts them, and it makes us unable to care. And so yeah, like thinking about the impending climate disaster, but also thinking about something like COVID-19, this virus. I can't get into it too much because I'm still like reading up on this exactly, but there's a bunch of thought around how industrialization and the way capitalism has basically forced us to live really close to each other, the way it's forced us to herd and produce our food, it has basically sped up the sped up and made viruses um, more common. And so basically not only is like capitalism wreaking havoc on the climate and Earth, but in terms of big disasters and viruses, like it's also speeding up that process. And then yeah, so like thinking about medicine, medical, like thinking about every really every area of life. Um, I it's much more clear to me how the system of capitalism, or like the many systems that it kind of operates in, uh, it that is its function to disrupt relationships. Um, and last thing, and I'll say about that is also our relationship to our bodies, because I mentioned that I do yoga, and it was really through yoga that I realized how alienated I was from my body, and how I was really stuck in this. It has to be perfect. It has to be a certain way in order, like for me to exist in society. And through yoga and mindfulness, I was really just able to return and get much more in tune with my body, and then also another relationship that just disrupts, in terms of fat phobia, in terms of ableism. Uh, yeah, so really, I just kind of like went down went down the list in terms of social identity, and it was like, oh, so yeah, we have work to do here too. And
I think
it's
that's
clear how it connects.
and I think that's like a key point to sort of wrap up on, is this idea that when we're talking about, yes, abolition as like it's almost like exactly like for you, it was like starting with the new Jim Crow, starting with prison abolition, and it's like expanded into and it's
Hmm.
interconnected and interwoven into um, systems around class, around bodies and ableism, around environment and environmental justice. All of these things are super interconnected in terms of how our social identities are policed and are maintained.
Hmm.
And so I think I also want to just highlight a couple things. One set is giving snaps to what you said of unfettered growth is antithetical to the natural process of seasons. I also see Noma joining us in the chat and the watching. So hi Noma, another Anytowner, and then also kind of a callback to as we wrap up. Maria Jose was saying, you know, what are some resources for folks who want to get into abolition work or who want to read up or learn more? I think you had mentioned uh, uh, Twitter, prison culture. I feel like that's something where I feel like I've learned a lot. I think also I'll just give a shout out to legit, like follow ErrDaisha. ErrDaisha's always posting like boss stuff. And then I think for the longest time I wasn't following you on Twitter, and I was like, wait, you have a Twitter. Why am I not following you on Twitter? And then I started following you on Twitter. I'm like, oh my
Oh.
gosh, there's even more stuff on here. So there's definitely like we have folks in our community who are already producing and posting boss stuff. And I kind of want to, as we wrap up, kind of have you share some of your handles, and then also I think you mentioned your YouTube channel that you said you're going to be posting on maybe later today, in terms of talking about Black buying power and Black capitalism, and yeah, so all of that. So if you can kind of give us the rundown of where we can find you and folks that you also follow or are interested in.
Okay, yes. Yeah, it's at ErrDaisha, my name, at on Instagram and Twitter. Two R's in ErrDaisha. And yeah, like I said, I did two Instagram lives. That's the first one's an hour, the second one's an hour and a half, about defunding the police, like putting some more thoughts. And the second one, I go through like an in-depth historical timeline of policing to kind of show that their function has always been the protection of property and over people. So yeah, definitely those are uploaded on my Instagram, so you can go look at those. And then yeah, I do have a YouTube channel. The newest video is called "We Have Nothing to Lose But Our Chains," and I did it about a month ago. So it's very much kind of how I was talking about. I got really clear on what it's going to take. That video kind of like starts it, and then the videos I'm gonna upload today or tomorrow continues it and gets more into capitalism. I definitely want to plug Dream Defenders. That's the group I worked with. They started after Trayvon Martin was killed. They occupied the governor's mansion, so they've been doing this for a while, and very much about building youth power, building abolitionists. Like you don't have to be an abolitionist to join. And they have a chapter in Tampa Bay and in St. Pete. So. And they're also all over Florida. So yeah, definitely follow Dream Defenders on Instagram and Twitter. It's at Dream Defenders. And then there's been so many, literally so many webinars. I've watched so much stuff. It's I can't even keep track of everything I've watched. So if you go to Haymarket Books YouTube channel, there's been like at least 5 different, either about, they have the people from Aid to Abolition on there. They have people talking about defunding the police. They have people talking about how it looks in schools. Yeah, so definitely go on Haymarket Books, YouTube.
Awesome. A really good primer on some sort of starting resources. And I see set squad. Fantastic. Yes, the Tampa Bay Dream Defenders. Well, ErrDaisha, thank you so much. Before we cut out, just want to say thank you so much for being part of this. Like, you're bringing so much knowledge, experience, and insight into this space and this conversation. Really appreciate the work that you're doing and for joining us and sharing with us.
Thank you so much for having me, and I love Community Tampa Bay. So thank you so much for continuing doing the work as hard as it is.
Thanks, fam. All right, take care.
All right, take care.
See you soon. Bye. All right, folks. If you can, I think, as always, we would love feedback from y'all. We have our survey for creating space. If you have ideas for who we should have on creating space, topics to cover, all of those things, please go ahead. Ashley, our AmeriCorps Vista at Community Tampa Bay, has posted it in the comments in the chat. So if you could fill that out, that is supremely helpful for us. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you again soon at another Creating Space. Take care, y'all.